The recording has started, so we can start.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Today, the topic is BIM in MEP Design. It's hosted by CIBSE YEN. We will be learning about the good practice and principles within the MEP design, taking a closer look at the principles of good practice in MEP design and how BIM can support better coordination and improved efficiency. Whether you're a student, a recent graduate, or already looking to work in the industry, understanding BIM's role is essential in staying ahead in the rapidly evolving field. Let me introduce myself. I'm Ayad Hamoun. I'm a graduate engineer currently working at Arup. I'll be your host today. Please meet your moderator, Siri Palapu, who's also a graduate engineer currently working at Arup. She will be holding questions at the end of the session. Now let me tell you about CIBSE. For those of you who don't know or are unfamiliar with CIBSE's role and responsibility in the region, we promote the intellectual welfare of its members and improve the understanding of building services within our society by organizing events and activities, all related to the built environment. Now, a little bit more about CIBSE. It stands for Chartered Institution of Building Services Engineers. It's a professional body that operates under the umbrella of Engineering Council. We promote excellence in engineering practices, provide guidelines, and set standards. We have three main goals as seen on the slide, which are advancing building services engineering, investing in education and research, and supporting built environment professionals. Now, under CIBSE UAE, we have different societies that cater to various interests and needs. These include the Young Engineers Network, which we are currently hosting the session, the WIPSE, which is Women in CIBSE, SOFI, which is the Society of Public Health Engineers, and the CIBSE UAE Technical Committee. Today's session, as I told you before, is brought to you by YEN. The YEN community is a free-for-all group consisting of young engineers and students. Our events and meetings are designed to provide support for engineers and focus more on the soft skills and knowledge needed to navigate careers. YEN offers a platform for young professionals to connect, learn, and grow in careers. We ensure you have loads of tools and support necessary to succeed. If you are a young graduate or a student, do check out YEN. Now, if I may say some rules to keep this session. Please note that this is a technical webinar. It's being recorded and the recording will be published online. If you have any questions, you're encouraged kindly to type them out in the chat and they will be addressed by the moderator at the end of the presentation. Now, your camera and mic will be muted. Please make sure there are no disturbances, no unwanted calls during the duration of the session. I will now hand over the stage to our speaker. Meet Adam Klosinski. He's the BIM manager at Arup, and truly this is an honor to just be hosting the session with him. It's going to be very informative. I'm looking forward to it myself. Adam?
Thank you so much, Aya, for this warm introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Adam Klosinski, and I will try right now to share my screen. I hope it will work. Just please confirm if you can see it.
It's
Perfect.
working.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity that I can share my knowledge with all of you. I hope the topic will be interesting. I'm going to talk about the BIM in MEP design and the ISO principles and the overall good practice. Starting with the presentation scope, presentation plan. So there will be a little bit of introduction about my background, just to let you understand how can I see like the BIM and what are the experience which I have. Later on, we are going smoothly to the BIM definitions and the BIM principles. Later on, we'll keep focus on the ISO standards, how the BIM process is being described by it. Later on, we'll keep focus on the main documents which describe this process, like the EIR and BEP. Later on, we'll keep focus on the people who will be responsible for developing this documentation. And later on, we'll keep focus on the MEP specific terms in terms of the BIM, like the good practice within the designing or modeling. By the end, there would be a chance to get knowledge about the practical usage of the programming and AI within the MEP design. By the end of this session, there would be a summary and the space for the Q&A. Starting with the introduction. So I've graduated Warsaw University of Technology. I'm the mechanical engineer. And I spent over 14 years within the engineering. At some point of my career, I wanted to change my path a little bit, and I decided to go within the BIM management. Because from every second which I remember, like everything which is related to BIM and digital was really interesting to me. So at some point I decided to keep only focus on the BIM management side. Practically, I've completed almost over even 100 different projects, starting from nuclear power plants, going to many office buildings, shopping centers, hospital, metro system, airports, data centers as well. My current role is a BIM manager in Arup, here based in Dubai, and I'm leading BIM operations. And also, I'm responsible for ensuring compliance with the ISO standards, which I'm going to talk about today. Okay, starting with the definition of BIM. I like to perceive BIM as another information revolution. And I would say, like, from the very beginning, when the computers have been developed, our world is being changed quite rapidly, especially within the last year when the AI revolution. This change, I would say, is even logarithmic. And by the end of this presentation, I will also show you how the BIM is connected strictly to the AI. So in terms of the definition, there are many different definitions within BIM. The most common part is like, this is just the abbreviation from building information modeling, but here is the place for the first misconception, because the building within this term is not about the building, like the object is a verb. It's like the creating information modeling. So definitely better understanding of BIM, it would be to understand BIM as a process of creating and managing information. And especially in Arup, we like to use this term as a better information management, basically. So whenever we're thinking about BIM, we need to think like every member within the design stage needs to be involved in to get the most of it, to get the most of this process, and to working collaboratively. We need to think like there are plenty of different users which need to be involved to in fact to get the most of it. And starting also with the main misconceptions which came when we are talking about the BIM. Very often we can spot like people is saying like BIM is a software, BIM is a Revit, BIM is a macro station, and so on. It's not true. BIM is only 3D model. Yes, so when we build just the 3D model is BIM already. It's another misconception. BIM is totally new. This is another misconception, and BIM saves time and money. What about the facts? The facts are this, like BIM as a process, as I have already described, and it would be described more detail within the ISO standards. BIM uses 3D models as the other elements, just as a tools. BIM is not totally new, but because BIM is connected to the project management, which is pretty old, and in fact, it's from the main kind from the very beginning. And BIM has the potential to achieve significant savings in time and money. But what needs to be done to achieve this significant savings in time and money? The appropriate standards need to be followed. And one of the most mature market currently is the UK market. And looking backwards, since 2016, if I remember well, the BIM has been mandated for all the major public projects. And as you can see on this slide, there were as there were appropriate documents which have been described as a PIAS 1192 prepared, public available specification. And based on this documents which were suited specific for the UK market, the ISO 19650 standards have been developed. And currently it's being used and it's being quite as a common standard across the whole over the world. In fact, of course, in some places all over the world, like for example in USA, they've got their own standards, but also the ISO standards are available and are being used. In relation to the ISO standards, there are like the 6 main chapters which are in the standards. The first one is the concept and the principles, which describe like the overall view, how this process should look like. The second part is dedicated to the delivery phase of the assets. So this is like basically the design stage. The next stage is the first. So the second is the design and the construction. The third is the operational phase of the assets. How this process is going to be used during the operation of the building or of the investment. The later on is the information exchange, how this information exactly should be exchanged and when. The 5 is about the security-minded approach, and the 6th one is about the health and safety information. In relation to the information workflow, which I'm going to keep focus on during my presentation, here you can see the overall process map. Like, as you can see on this slide, we've got the distinction between the parties which are being involved in the process. So the appointing party, in other terms, is just the client. It's just the organization who are going to appoint the other parties. The lead appointed parties, like the lead consultant, and the appointed parties which are working directly under the lead consultant. And in each stage, you can see there is a need to prepare the appropriate documentation. The most important are the 2 of them. The first one is the EIR, and this is basically what's expected from the client side about the investment, about what they want to achieve in terms of the BIM and in terms of the information workflow. And the answer to this requirement in front of the client, it would be the pre and post BIM execution plan. So now in terms of the EIR, as it has been described, this is the document which outlines the client expectation regarding the model and the information exchange. And basically, based on the common practice and also the ISO standards, this is like the minimum which should be included. So everything in relation to the expected BIM use, how the BIM should be used, and what are the main technological requirements or the management requirements, and also about how many parameters should be included in the models and what and how they're going to be used in the later stage. As an answer, as I said, there is a BIM execution plan, and it should come with the 2 forms: the pre-contract during the tender stage and the post-contract after the tender stage, after the lead appointed party has been chosen. So the BEP is definitely much more comprehensive than the EIR, because it should be like the appropriate plan about how exactly this BIM process should look like during the design and also during the construction. Because what's a common misconception is like the BIM execution plan is only related to the design. No, it's initially, of course, it describes how the design process should look like, but later on, this BIM execution plan should be handed over to the constructor, and during the construction site, all of these principles should be maintained, and the information during the construction site should be also fulfilling the construction models. So as a summary, the BIM execution plan, it could be a very comprehensive document. As you can see, currently, this is one of the BIM execution plan which I have developed, and it consists of over 100 pages. And even despite the additional appendix who has been also developed to this document. So once we understand the ISO principles in a very short way, we need to understand like there should be a whole BIM team appointed to develop or to fulfill all of these requirements, or even to prepare the initial documents. And this is what you can see on the screen. This is the example of the project BIM structure, and this has been developed by me based on the industry standards. So the main person who is managing BIM, it's being called like the BIM manager. And also in terms of these terms like the BIM manager or the BIM coordinator or BIM engineers, it's also worth to mention like they have been mentioned in the ISO standards. But of course, in the ISO standards, there isn't such term like the fire protection BIM coordinator, because the standards are somehow the overall. Yes, they are describing like the process, but we need to then take the standards and make the adoption of the process. So this is the adoption for the MEP team. And as you can see, we've got the BIM manager who produce and updates the overall BIM execution plan according to the EIR, federates model, conduct like the overall virtual design review and so on. And later on, we've got the BIM coordinators. BIM coordinators are based on the ISO standards like the task team managers. They should all of their tasks keep focusing on the specific discipline. Yes, and they are like responsible for BIM related tasks within this discipline. Later on, there are like the BIM engineers, the engineers who are also modeling inside Revit. And also I needed to include here like the senior engineers, because this is typically like one of the tasks of the senior engineers is not like the modeling elements, but to allow this BIM process be efficient, all of the senior engineers need to have the capability to at least open the models and do the appropriate also checking directly in the model. And why it's so important? On this slide, I have made like the comparison between the traditional workflow and the new workflow, which is being adapted in many places, and it's definitely, in my understanding, is definitely much more efficient. So the traditional workflow plays on this like there are the markups which are being handed over between all of the engineering team back to the technician team. So as we know from the history, it's not the most efficient way, definitely, because why this process is not efficient? Because there is a lot of iteration between the markups and a lot of misunderstandings between the design intent and this what has been described in the markup. So the much more efficient way is like to use the BIM engineers, so the engineers who are capable of doing the modeling itself. Of course, in some cases, it would be like the BIM modeling needs to be done only by the people who will have like the more BIM skills. But in the overall principles, all of the engineers should be able to do also this thing and to design directly in Revit, not in the 2D or the PDF. Okay, so now going smoothly to the MEP principles. So as we have described the BIM team, so the BIM team is a part of the overall MEP team, and the overall MEP team is just a part of the whole orchestra, as you can see on this slide. Like each part plays their own role within the whole investment process. So in terms of the MEP disciplines, I would like to first of all go through the federation strategy in terms of the BIM and the distinction between all the parties, because it's very often is being called like just the MEP, but there aren't any people who will be working simultaneously across all of the disciplines. Yes, we've got the distinction, and the first one is the mechanical, and especially within the BIM, there is a huge, very often there is a huge misunderstanding and the problems within the federation strategy when this all models being combined together. So the distinction should be, and it is very often, as I'm going to present. So the first one is the mechanical, and this is the HVAC, so the heating, ventilation, air conditioning. The next one, which is commonly being used, is the electrical part. And in this electrical part, I have also listed the telecommunication installation, but based on the industry standards, very often the ICT team are also being separated as another discipline. The next one would be plumbing. So within the plumbing, we've got such installations like sanitary, rainwater, domestic cold water, but also very often within the plumbing is also being described also the fire protection, like the sprinkler system and the fire water system. And having this, we are now able to understand what's behind the MEP model. Yes, behind the MEP model, it could be like the whole of the list of this discipline. but of course it depends on the big of the project or the size of the project. It's like there could be a one combined model, or there would be a separate models per each of the discipline. And this is like the very important thing in terms of the creating the BIM execution plan, or in terms, or even the kick of the project, is the appropriate federation strategy. Like based on these principles about the federation strategy and about the distinction how the teams are going to work, it's like the most common practice. Like it needs to be very detailed thought just at the beginning of the project. So once we understand like there are plenty of different teams working simultaneously on the model, one of the BIM advantages is like it allow to work these people to work like for this all of these teams simultaneously in the cloud models. So basically what's currently is being used, like the Revit is the most common software which is being used for the MEP discipline, and basically it allows just people working in the local copy of the models and synchronize this to the central copy in a very smooth way. Going further in terms of the MEP disciplines, because like for the MEP disciplines, the main backgrounds are the architectural backgrounds. Yes, we cannot design our installation if there wouldn't be any architectural. This is like the basic principles. So once we've got these basic principles from the architect, we are able to use this appropriately. So whenever there would be a architectural model, we can use our internal tools to create, for example, the spaces and to get like the initial information. So despite to measure this manually from the CAD files, once we've got the architectural models, we can do some automation in terms of the very initial equipment sizing and so on. The other thing is like once we've got the spaces created, we can then assign the appropriate parameters which can be used. And based on these parameters, we are able to produce at the very initial stage or early stage of design information or informative the drawings, how the installations are being splitted and so on. And what's really important is like whenever there would be a change from the architectural point of view, these drawings can be changed automatically. This is just another examples about the like splitting of the whole of the systems which are being involved. And the other side also which is being used and which is also very often being described as the BIM 6D is about the energy modeling. So once we've got the appropriate architectural model and the appropriate mechanical MEP models, we are also able to do some energy calculations to predict how this building is going to or how the cost of operating the buildings would be in the future as well. In terms of the modeling of the installations, definitely at the beginning of describing the modeling of the installation, I need to keep focus on the level of information needs. So this is one of the main principles from the ISO, is about to describe exactly what kind of the information is needed at which stage. Yes, because it's very often, and it's also quite common misconception, like there could be used many different Revit families which are available from many manufacturers, but is there any point to fulfill your model with so much information at very initial stage? At some point, this information could be very could allow quite a lot of misunderstanding from all of the others. So one of the main principles is just to define what's really expected at which stage. And using these tools, like for example, Revit, in this example, there is even a build tools which allow to control the visibility on the graphic representation of the elements. In terms of the production of the modeling, we need to be aware, like all of these elements which are going to be placed within the model, it comes with them automatically all of the parameter or all of the data sets. Yes. And one of the main principles of BIM is not only the graphical representation, but in my opinion, even the most important part are all the data which is embedded. And by default, and this is also another misconception, by default, it could be fulfilled by the data which initially was correct, but at later stage, hasn't been updated. Yes, so we need to, and especially for those people who are just starting within BIM, please remember that the data is as much important as the graphical representation within the model. Yeah, so once we've got our modeling elements connected properly, we can use the built-in tools or the automation which is behind the software. Like for example, in this example, which is quite being used. This is like the system inspector, which allow the pressure drop calculations being done automatically within the models, but also in terms of the automatic duct sizing, we need to remember that this is just a software. Yes, nothing can be done automatically without any supervision from the experienced engineer or the BIM modelers. So please, whenever, as this is just the starting point from many of you, please remember, like whenever you will be using the automation tool, please remember to also check before approval or before sending for the approval to the senior engineers, please check also your input, because at very initial stage, it could look like everything is all good, but when you go into the details, when you go into the checking the parameters, it should show like the good view is only on the screen, but behind this there is like the totally mess. So please be careful and always check what's being done. Going further, also what is possible, so once the installation is being modeled properly, once the calculations is being done properly, we can then use this, or even, I would say, even talk with this installation and check if all of the design principles have been done and have been followed during the whole design stages. As for example, on this example, you can see how what are the air velocities within the ductwork. But okay, so it's in relation to the MEP discipline. It's not only the mechanical part; it's also the electrical part. And what's being widely used, there is like the panel schedule for all of these electrical elements, which can produce like the automation within the total loads and so on. But once again, to allow this work smoothly, all of the all of the elements should have like the appropriate parameter dataset. And okay, so going further, once we've got our model elements modeled, we then also connect this or even create from scratch the diagrams which could be embedded into the models. Yes, this is like the most common used, like the simultaneously while the model is being built, at some point we can also like create diagrams from scratch. And there are currently even the AI tools which being used for creation the diagrams just basically based on the model elements. But to allow this work, all of the model elements should be connected and properly modeled with the property datasets. In terms of the relation to the model elements, as I have said, this is just the example which have been developed like many years ago, almost 7 years ago. I remember to use this tool to combine the elements between the model elements and the diagram elements to fulfill the data. Because once we develop the model and once we develop the diagrams, there shouldn't be any point to multiply the same value across all of these elements. We need to let the model elements to talk to each other and let the automation work properly. So yeah, in terms of the preparation of the project documentation, there are also dedicated tools which can be used for the annotation of elements. So something which can take like initially per user like 6 hours per drawings to annotate the drawings. Now there are already tools which are based on the AI, which really speed up the process. But once again, there are the tools, but these are just the tools. Always the appropriate engineer needs to check if everything has been done correctly. And moving forward also to the creating bills of the quantities, once we model all of the elements, once we fulfill with the appropriate data, definitely something which is being widely used, like the automation of the bill quantities directly from the models, in spite of like just counting these elements manually, we can do some automation and get all of these quantities automatically. Moving forward to the common data environments, which are pretty important in the BIM process. There are plenty of different CDE which being used widely, but for the UAE market or even for the Europe market, Autodesk Construction Cloud is the most common one. But we need to remember, like, this is the technology, and technology is rapidly changing. And for example, these terms like the BIM 360 design, BIM 360 glue, BIM 360 build has been already changed into the new ones. Yes, so these terms, this technology is changing rapidly, and we need to understand. And whenever somebody new is joining, they need to understand what are the principles between like all of these modules, just to understand how to interact with them. One of the most usage of CDE is the virtual design review. So despite of opening the Revit models, which can take like quite a lot of time, you can just get insight into the model directly via web browser. And this is just the example when we see like the coordination between the services in the corridor or in the power plant. And later on, once we've got the insight, we are also able to produce the markups, and as I have said, despite of creating the markups on the PDFs, we can use a dedicated tools or the BCF format. This is BIM collaboration format files, and based on this, the efficiency between the like the design intent and how it's going to be implemented in the model is definitely better than to provide this on the PDFs. And later on, we can also produce the overall clash detection reports. As you can see on this example, there is like the whole history, how this process has looked like. As you can see, there are resolved many thousands of classes. So to get this result, all of this iteration between the clash coordination needed to be done. And based on these clash detection models and clash detection reports, we can then say if the model is coordinated, and we can also establish, or we can also assume, like the quality of the models can be maintained. So there are different of add-ins, like plenty of them, but also what is important, and especially for those who are just starting, not all of the add-ins are expensive, or it's only allowed to the big companies. Some of them are free to use, and each of you can use. And for example, I need to mention about the die roots, because I'm really fan of this. This is a free add-in which can be used by everyone, and which can speed up the process, especially in terms of the die roots ProSheets. It automatically can print like the PDFs, the WGs, and export the Navisworks files directly from your model. And also, why I'm mentioning about that, because especially when somebody is joining or this BIM overall world, it's really important to get know as soon as possible with all of the add-ins which are available. Yes, because you can get to some point, like you can see like somebody else in work would spend like many hours doing something, and now if you are aware of the add-ins which can be used for this process, it would really help also for your development of your career. But sometimes conventional methods or available add-ins aren't enough to meet project needs. So what should we do then? The answer is programming. Yeah. So whenever there aren't any add-ins or there aren't ready-to-use tools, the only solution it would be to implement directly the programming. And this is an example of one of my Python script which I have developed, which have been used for fulfilling the appropriate parameter data. As I have described in your area, the most common problems with the models is the parameter data set. And for example, when there is a specific requirements from the client, like this specific parameters need to be fulfilled, because all of the important data which are from us, for example, from the facility management point of view, needs to be fulfilled properly. So despite like letting the teams to do this manually, definitely we can make this automation work and create a dedicated tool, which I have already created for this particular project, which fulfilling automatically based on what engineers have done within the models is being fulfilled automatically, and is being developed exactly as the client needed. Another example of the automation was the workset automation tool, which I have developed on one of the projects, and currently is going to be used across all the other projects when the project would be quite comprehensive in terms of the spacious coordination. So what's this tool do? It allows user to open the empty Revit model, and based on the assumptions about which discipline you are working on, or which selection or which area are you going to work on, it allows you to automatically open all of the worksets and all of the links which need to be linked into. Basically, this add-in has saved tons of hours for our team or one of our projects, when initially the opening the model took 3 hours to be open. Once this automation tool has started to be used, the opening model has been decreased to 15 minutes. So having this knowledge and to multiply the user which have been used this automation tool was very significant once. Yeah, like the summary. So there are, as I have said, there are plenty of different tools which are being used at many different stages. And as soon as you, as an initial engineer or the young engineer, would like to join this BIM process, in my opinion, you should keep focus on Revit learning or the learning within the main software which is being used for your discipline, but also have the knowledge about any additional add-ins which are available there. And why we are doing this? So what we are using the BIM. So it's all being used to get as smooth as through the design stage and to the construction stage until the operation stage of the building. So as you can see on this slide, on the left-hand side, we've got a very initial BIM model, and on the right-hand side, we've got a snapshot from the ready building. As you can see, there are quite common and quite similar one. And also at the end, I just want to one more time say thank you for CIBSE to allow me to share my knowledge, but simultaneously, what is really important, I'm very happy like so many people are available, and I hope like so many even more people would be able to watch this training, because like the sharing knowledge is very important, but gaining knowledge or even willing to learn is even more important. Okay, so that's it from my side. I hope I have fitted within the 40 minutes or maybe even a little bit more, but I believe and I hope that that was interesting.
Thank you so much, Adam. That was perfect. It was rather so informative, actually. And I think Siri will be taking over the Q&A section.
Yes, thank you so much, Adam. That was such a great presentation, and I think you covered so many crucial things in just 45 minutes. So
Wow,
yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, and okay, so since we're here, we do have some questions. So the first question is from Salman Ishfaq, and he says, "Hi, Adam. In the USA, we call BIM as VDC. Could you explain the difference, if any, between the two? Also, is there a standard used for the detailing of the model? Example, showing flanges, connections for duct segments." So I think that's two questions. So
okay,
yeah.
So the terms which have been raised, like the VDC, is for the virtual design consultant, or it has also the others explanation. But basically, the VDC most common is being used for the digital construction, I would say. So whenever you see the VDC manager, is the BIM manager, but for the construction stage. Yeah, and also from the other part of the question, could you explain the difference, if any, between the two? Okay, also, is there standards used for detailing of the model? Yes, of course. There is like the LOD level. So if you are based in the USA, it's quite common, or it would be quite common for you to use the LOD levels which have been developed by the American Institute of Architects. There is the LOD levels which being described as LOD 100, LOD 200, 300, 400, and even 500. And basically, this is quite common. It's being used across the whole world, I would say. And typically, just as a summary, because this is the topic which we can spend like another hour just discussing this. But as an overall view of the LOD levels which being used, it's like the LOD 100 is for the concept stage, LOD 200 is for the schematic design stage, 300 is being for the detailed design stage, and this is typically this is the end of the design consultant, and now it's go to the construction stage. Yes, and it's being developed like 350, typically including the supports and the association between the elements and the building elements like the support hangers and so on. And later on, just fulfilling the information directly from the construction site, like from the LOD 400 and so on. Yeah, I hope I have covered this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that answers the question. So before I take second question, maybe if anybody else has any questions, please drop it in the chat. So the second question is from Mohammed Iqbal. It says, how is AI practically integrated into BIM? So this is something that I'm also interested in, and maybe if you can give us maybe an overview of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as I have described in my presentation, AI currently is being widely used for enhancing like the workflows which are already there. So for example, for the tools which I have shown you, like this, even for this workset automation tool and so on, it speed up the process of creating this tool, yes, because it has been directly used within the software development tools. Yes, so whenever I'm using the Visual Studio Code or PyCharm or any other IDE, I'm able to use the IE tools which can speed up the process of creating the code. Yes, I would like to avoid the sentence like, okay, you just don't need to know any software in the software languages. You can use the AI just to create from scratch the ready to use the code. But no, it's not the case. It's not working right now. And currently, AI is really good in terms of the checking if the code is working fine, or even spotting the places within the code which can be improved, but rather than just using for creating this. The practical implication of AI within a BIM or within models is quite wide right now, and it's really developing. There is something maybe I can even recommend investigating this further. There's a very very famous, I would say, currently Learn Revit IP. .com. This is one of the website which I'm using also for developing the API. But the second one, which shows especially how the AI is being used within the AIC, like the AIC, architecting, engineering, and consulting, is the AI in AIC.com. This is also something which can be useful to investigating how the AI is being used widely in the market. So as a summary, I would say even like AI currently is being used via the tools which just try to speed up the typical design process which have been previously maintained.
Yeah, Adam, if you could maybe type the website names, or maybe you can send that later in the chat. That would be great.
I will place it in the meantime. Okay.
I think
Maybe I will just stop sharing just to see the chat. Okay.
Yeah. Does Bushra have any questions in the Q&A box?
We have one more question in the chat box as well. Yeah. Okay. If you don't have any questions in chat box, I think let's go to the next question. And yeah, I think this is also a very wide topic that is in the industry. So this is from Hossam Ali, and he says, "Hi Adam, quick question: how can BIM be used in clash detection?" So that's quite a hot topic.
This is okay. So I have just shared the website, which I was mentioning. earlier. So in terms of the clash detection, it's being widely used because once the elements are being modeled, we've got a dedicated tools, like for example, the Navisworks, which allow, based on the NWC exports from Revit model, we can conduct a very detailed clash detection models, and later on, based on these models, we can even produce the clash detection reports, which would explain in detail like how the quality models are being currently developed within the models. So this is so comprehensive, like so wide question, and I would say even very initially, and this is also very often mispractice, I would say. But quite a lot of people, like even internally in Revit, there is something which is called the interference check. The interference check is the dedicated tool directly in Revit, which allow you to check if your elements are being in clash with the others. And it's even allowed to create a very initial reports. Yeah, so I believe that's it. Yeah,
I think it covers in various ways how clash detection can be detected, or in general, what's the scope like. So, okay, we have one more question. So the next question is from also Salman Ishfaq again. So he's asking, can you give a brief description of Dynamo and its applications in BIM?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So the Dynamo is the graphical programming, I would say, and this is a very significant bridge between the automation and between Revit, I would say, because the Dynamo initially Dynamo have been developed like almost 10 years ago, and initially it allow user to connect the nodes and to automate some of the tasks inside Revit. So as I have shown you like the tools which have been written in Python or in C#, but if somebody is not available, is not aware about, or is doesn't have the knowledge to implement this directly in the programming, I would say like starting with the Dynamo and learning Dynamo, it would be a huge beneficial as well, because even without the software programming knowledge, it allows people to automate some of the tasks. Of course, the usage of the Dynamo, it could be also fulfilled by the Python nodes. Yes, so even within the Dynamo, you can create the Python nodes when you can store your code. Yes, but without this, I think the Dynamo, and thank you so much for this question, I think the Dynamo would be a great start for the automation, just to learn the Dynamo. It's a built-in within Revit, so you don't need to install this as additional add-in. It's already there by default. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So we have a few more questions too. So the next question, if that's okay, is from Mohammed Shams Syed. So I think, Adam, you have a lot of questions. It's quite a hot topic, really.
Yeah, we are going to
So
spend the whole evening here.
yeah, definitely. But I hope we can cover most of them. So the next is from Mohammed Shams Syed. So he is so he says, on the topic of clash detection, are there any new AI tools that can be used to improve clash detection compared to traditional methods? Example, Navisworks.
Yeah, so in terms of the clash detection, I haven't seen any practical usage of the AI within the clash detection, but maybe what's worth to mention is like there are even dedicated tools, the additional tools, which can speed up this process. One of this is BIM Track, which is also being widely used, and it's also automate the information between the what are the clashes and where there are and who are going to solve them, because we need to remember, like in terms of the clash detection process, it's like the clash when the spotting the clash is just the initial phase. Okay, so we spot the clash. Okay, that's fine. We know like we've got some problem, but the most crucial part is about how this clash would be resolved and who will resolve this clash. Yes, because like spotting, like there are thousands of clashes. Okay, this is the initial tool, and basically it can be used even within the interference check. But within the tools which are being used for the clash detection or for the clash resolution, there is also another tool which just came to my mind, which is called the MagicCAD. MagicCAD allow you to automatically even create the offsets of the pipes or create the offsets for the ductwork. But once again, once everything has been done automatically, we always need to check how it's being done. Yes, because even if we provide the initial parameters, like for example, always do the class resolution going down. But what if the above is available in this case? Yes, so you always need to get into the details, in fact.
Yeah, I think yeah. So the next question is, I'm sorry if I butcher your name. It's Davisha Bey. So the question is, hi Adam, is it more efficient and effective to work with a combined BIM model that includes mechanical, electrical, and pH elements, or to develop separate models and coordinate them later? What are the trade-offs in terms of performance, collaboration, and clash detection?
Thank you so much for this question. That's a really good question, I would say. Definitely, there isn't any point to develop your model without initial coordination with any other models. Yes. So, like I have seen this on several projects, like the clash detection has started like after 1 month or after 2 months or 3 months of work. There is no point to do so. Even I would say, even before starting to modeling or to developing any of the models, the good practice is like, I have done this on many projects. We have developed coordinated sections, yes, and based on these sections, we have saved the initial phases for the installation, yes, and now we know, like for example, the ductwork we're going on this side, and it has like the half meter in this corridor, yes. For the plumbing, we've got this per section, and so on. So yeah, that's the good point. Like there isn't any point of developing the model without the coordination or creating the models separately and then start at some point the coordination. No, the coordination should start even the first even the first elements would be modeled.
Okay. Yeah, I think you've given a great answer for that as well. And yeah, it's something very, very important to consider. So I think that would be the end of questions. But just in case our young members have anything to ask, Adam here.
Bushra?
I'm going to take the silence as no. So if you have any other questions, Adam, we will be troubling you and sending you emails. So you can clarify that for us. So
Okay,
please
no
expect
worries.
people
No worries.
chase
Thank
your
you so
email.
much once
Thank
again
you all
for
again
this
for joining.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
thank you so much.
Adam. It was a really great session, and we really appreciate you taking this time out and sharing all of your knowledge with us, because I really enjoyed the session, and I hope to have more collaborations with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And
Before we wrap up, you guys, I just want to encourage anyone that's not a Yen member to reach out to Bushra, Gareth, Shams as well. It's an amazing community and you'll learn a lot. Trust me.
yep. So just to close that off, if anybody is interested to join Yen, you can always follow us on our LinkedIn channels. We follow, our name is CIBSE YEN UAE. If you're unable to find that, we have the links here on the screen. Worst case scenario, you still have any questions and you don't know what to do, please email us at yenuae@cibse.org, which is also on the screen, and we will be happy to assist you. And we would love to see you in the committee. So thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time out. I hope you have a good rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.